Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome to our course Marketing Management Part 2. We are in week 5 and this is second session of this on this pricing module. I am Shashi, Shekhar, Mishra and I am jointly offering this course with Prof. Jayanta, Chatterjee. I'll just give you a brief recap of what we have discussed in the previous session that was yesterday. We discussed about price and overall the role of the price in a strategic marketing process, and there we talked about that pricing basically is a strategic tool, and we discussed about a lot of blunders that organizations make in pricing a product. So we talked about what happened to in the case of Tata Nano, that unintentionally the product, which was very good product, got a tag of a cheap car kind of thing, and that has hurt its sales over the period of time. Then we have also talked about that pricing has to be something which will reinforce the intended positioning of the product. This was one of the inference we have drawn from the case of the launch of Tata Nano, that the pricing should reinforce this thing rather than basically be in conflict with the intended positioning of the product. Then we also discussed about that pricing should be something which should be in sync with the other 3 P's or the other marketing mix components. And then we talked about how consumers process this prices. So we talked about the consumer psychology and their the processing of the prices, and therein what we have seen was we talked about the reference prices, we talked about the pricing cues, the product quality leadership. So some of these things we have discussed. In the reference prices, we have seen that consumers generally have some kind of references in their mind, like whether it is a fair price, whether it is a typical price, or this is the too much for a product to pay. So there are upper bound prices, there are lower bound prices. So these kind of references they exist in the minds of the consumers, which they can think of from their past experience, or the ingredients in the product, or the kind of effort that goes into production or the creation of those kind of product, that allows a customer to assess the value which is inherent in a product, and based on those references they try to understand whether the price that a company is offering is something which they should pay or not pay. With that, we also talked about the price cues that companies use, that the use of this sale kind of, or the big sale kind of banners, or the symbols that organizations use for creation of the customer for attracting the consumer attention towards those product. Or probably we talked about how the consumers process the price point, that is we talked about something which is can be priced at 299 or something which is priced at 300. So instead of starting from the right to left, consumer tend to process the price information from 299. So they will begin with 2 and then they will come to the 2 nines, and instead of starting with the 3 and then 0, starting with 00 or 99, they start with the first number, that is 2 or 3. So when they see 2, they say that the price is closer towards 200, instead of having a look that the price is actually 300 or closer to 300, and that creates a certain kind of a perception that the pricing is on the lower side. So with this we have talked about different things that goes into the mind of the consumer. What we are going to talk about today is that how do we set prices. So this setting prices has a certain steps inside it, and it begins with basically the selecting the pricing objective. This is something very important, and we quite often see that in fact this is something which is not present. So it is like the head of the something, and if it is not present, you can understand it will not have any direction to go. So the first thing in setting the price is you should understand what is the objective of that pricing, and that is where we discussed about that pricing is something, a strategic tool. It reinforce the positioning, or it should reinforce or it should help in achieving an organization its marketing objectives, and in probably broad sense it should help the organization in attaining its organizational objectives. So you will understand that as a one of the marketing mix, one of the P's in the marketing mix, it has to in sync with the organizational objectives, business objectives, marketing objectives in an organization. Then once we have understood what are the objectives, we are going to discuss about each of these steps in much more detail in some of the next few sessions, but I am just summarizing this process. And then in the second step you will see that once you have set the objectives, the second thing is that you have to understand what is the demand, because you will see that demand and the price are something which have a close relationship. Many times you will see that the two have a negative relationship, but it is not a universal truth, that in some cases you will find out that the price and the demand may in certain case will follow a positive relationship, or it could be in an inverted U shape relationship. Maybe in some of the one of the sessions I will give you an example where this demand and the price follow a different kind of trajectories or the graph, you understand. So once you understand that for corresponding to different price point there are different demands, so you can find out that which price point company should price a product, so that they can maximize the demand, or in turn they can fulfill the pricing objective. So whether you want to maximize your revenue or whether you want to maximize your profit, looking at the different aspects of the organization and looking at the different aspects of the basically this price and the demand and the cost. The next thing that comes into the picture is that once you have estimated the demand, then you have to estimate the cost also, and then therein we will talk about the different types of the cost, the behavior of these different types of cost, and depending on these cost how we price the product is also influenced. Then once you have estimated your cost, then we talk about analyze the competitors price mix, and you need to understand how competitors are pricing their product, what method basically they are using for pricing the product. And there basically when we talk about competitors price mix, there we also look into the competitors objectives. So if a competitor's objective is different from your objective, they might be pricing the product in a different way. So these are some of the nuances probably as someone who is pricing a product you need to understand. And then the second last thing is that you have to choose the pricing method. So there are different pricing method like markup pricing, cost plus pricing, and then you have competition based pricing, you have perceived value pricing. These are some of the different methods we will talk about. And then finally you choose as one of these most appropriate method of pricing the product depending on the different variables which are there, which exist while operating in the market, and then basically you choose select the final price of the product. So with this this method, the whole process, you arrive at a price point that is the most suitable for pricing a product. So today I am going to talk about the different pricing objectives. Broadly, if I see, there are 5 type of objective that exist among the different players in the market. You will see that this pricing objective, the first one is a survival, the second is maximum current profit, where you try to maximize your profit, the third is maximum market share, the fourth is market skimming. Some of these things we have talked or referenced in the earlier session or the previous module or the previous course, that is marketing management part 1, but in this module of the pricing we will talk about these ones in much more detail, and if possible, if we have the time, we will also talk about some of the examples of this kind of pricing. So the last one in this pricing objective is this product quality leadership. So, these are the 5 different types of objectives, and here you will see that the first one, the survival, is something that exists when in a company which is operating in the market, they are coping up with a situation where they have over capacity. So, the supply is on a higher side than the what exists in the demand that exists in the market. So, when the supply is on a higher side than demand, you will see that there will be a very intense competition in the market among the players, and survival also could be a problem when the consumer needs are changing very fast, and as an organizations you might not be able to cope up with those kind of changing needs, or you are unable to bring the product that are in sync with the changing consumer trends. So, in those cases basically your survival is at the stake, and your organization's future is at the stake, and what you should do is as an organization is that we often see that in this situation what companies try to do is that they price a product that is variable cost plus some additional margin, or some variable cost plus something, so to cover some part of their fixed cost, and in that way they are able to ensure that they can survive for some time or some significant time. So, in that case you will see in this the survival method of pricing, the prices should cover variable cost plus some fixed cost, and you will see that survival is a short term strategy wherein the pricing is not done basically keeping in mind the long run future of the organization. It is just to say that you can exist in some time, you are able to have retain your customers, or you are able to hold the ground in the market for some time, and then you have to eventually in the time period that you buy through this kind of pricing, you are able to learn some kind of differentiation, or you are able to add value in your product, and in the long run you have to come out with the products or the offering which are clearly differentiated, and in that case you will be able to probably survive for the long run. So, after survival I am going to talk about the next method, the next objective which is commonly seen in the pricing objective is this maximum current profit. You will see that the maximum current profit is something where this company has to first determine what kind of demand or what kind of cost exist with respect to the alternative prices. So, one should have a very good knowledge about its demand and the cost functions, but you will see that when we are theoretically talking about that a good knowledge of the demand and cost function, it may not be very true, because when we will talk about the nitty-gritty of demand and the cost, you will see that there are something in the demand and the cost that cannot be very accurately measured, or they cannot be very easily assessed, and that way probably our accuracy of demand and the cost function is not a very good assumption, or something which does not hold very easily. So, but if we assume that we understand the demand and the cost very well with respect to different price alternative prices, then that what we try to do is that we choose a demand and the cost and the pricing in a way that the price that maximizes our current profit in the maximum possible way. So, we try to maximize our current profit, cash flows, or rate of return. But what we will see that in this kind of way, where we are trying to maximize our current profit, we may eventually hurt our long run performance by ignoring the effects of other marketing mix variables, and we may not be able to very clearly understand that competitors' reactions and the regulations that might be existing in the market with respect to the pricing. So, those kind of things we may ignore in this kind of pricing method, and eventually what will happen is that it may not work very well for the organization. The third type of pricing objective that we see in the market is this maximum market share. We also understand this kind of pricing in the way that it is a penetration pricing. Now, you see in the penetration pricing, what happens is that the companies try to reach the maximum possible customers in a market, or they try to maximize their reach in the market. So, the basic belief that exists in the market about this kind of pricing is that higher sales volume would lead to a lower unit cost and higher long run profit. And in this kind of pricing, one of the thing that we believe is that customers are very price sensitive, or affordability is a issue where the prices could lead a product not to sell, because the customers might not the long or the big part of the market may not be able to afford the product. So, the idea is that when you go to the maximum number of the customers and you are able to reach the maximum possible sales volume, what happens in that case is that your unit cost goes down, because you will see that when we talk about the cost, we will see that the fixed cost as well as variable cost both will go down when we reach to the maximum possible levels of the production. So, our cost goes down, and when our cost goes down with respect to our competitors, one thing also happens is that with over the period of time, when we are operating on a higher sales volume, so we are producing on a higher side, our learning curve is also very high. So, in that way also we are able to reduce our production and other cost. So, in that sense our costs are very low compared to competitor, and we are in a very advantageous situation that we will be able to gain more profit by selling it at a particular price point compared to our competitors. So, you will see that the one thing that works for the maximum market share or this penetration pricing is that low prices stimulates the market growth, because when the prices is on the lower side, the customers are motivated to have the product. Think of a drug where the price of a drug is on a very higher side. So, in a society, that drug can be afforded by only a few people, but if a drug is on a very affordable price, and that is where the government regulations also comes into the picture, that the most of the people in the society can afford the product. So, whether they can directly afford, or there is some kind of funding mechanism through the government or other bodies, the product can be made available, and it basically stimulates the growth or the consumption of that product. And some of the things that work in favor of this kind of pricing is that cost also falls, as I have already said owing to the learning experience, and this kind of penetration pricing is actually a repulsion to your competitors. So, when your margins are very low, for competitors or for a new entrant, it will not be a very attractive market. Another very important aspect with the case of penetration pricing is that if you as one of the supplier has reached to a higher sales volume, your costs will be on a lower side, where on the other side a new entrant which is entering into the market, they will not realize the sales volume on a higher side very easily, and they will take a lot of time or lot of effort from their side, and in fact they will require a lot of investment also to gain the sales. So, in that case what happens is their cost of production or the cost of offering the product to a customer will be a very high compared to you. So, that is something which is a repulsion to the competitors not to enter into such kind of markets. The last two types of the pricing objectives are maximum market skimming. Skimming is opposite of the penetration, where the organization understand that they are bringing something very new and very innovative. So, in that case the company try to maximize their the current gain, and in this kind of thing you will see that quite often the technology firms have this kind of pricing, where they price their product on a very higher side. The latest kind of iPhone or a latest kind of a new technological gadget, you will see it is on a very higher side of the price, because there are a large number of potential buyers exist. They are technology enthusiasts, they are ready to purchase a product irrespective of its prices, as long as it is they can afford it. So, the maximum ceiling can be reached in this kind of market skimming pricing, And one thing one has to keep in mind, that unit cost should not be very high to cancel the price advantage, because when you operate on the low volume, production volume, your cost will also be high, but that should not negate the price advantage. One thing which with market skimming is, which is exactly opposite to this penetration pricing, is that when your margins are very high, you as an industry sector will be very lucrative to your competitors also. Now skimming basically is used also to communicate the superior product image. The last type of the pricing is that product quality leadership, where these are, you can also say, a sort of affordable luxuries. So product is of perceived as a very high quality, taste and status, and they are priced in a way they are just within the reach of the customer. So they are priced in just below the ceiling level, and whomsoever as a customer, potential customer, wants to have it, they can have this kind of luxurious product within their range. And lot of companies basically come out or operate in this space because they operate to a larger market segment. So these are the 5 different pricing objectives. With this I will stop here, and when we will meet in the next session, we will talk about the remaining aspects of setting the prices, and then we will also try to look into some other related concept and the issues which are related with the pricing. Thank you very much.